let's move on to the Bank Secrecy Act, BSA. A couple big acronyms that sit underneath the Bank Secrecy Act: AML, Anti-Money Laundering, and what's my
OFAC.
other one?
OFAC. OFAC?
OFAC.
Yeah, that's the Office of Foreign Access Control, maybe. It's not an acronym I unpack very often. When you're
and their acronym is KYC, Know Your Customer, right?
actually, that has changed. It used to be KYC, and then under the BSA AML law revisions over the last few years, now it's actually called CIP, Customer Identification Program.
So let's kill the acronym soup part of the conversation. Explain to. Now, this applies to employers too, because you're going to have to comply with a payroll provider's process.
Yep.
But again, CPAs, accounting firms, payroll providers, anybody who's touching money and touching data, banking information, what is it that we need to understand in this area?
Okay. So the major thrust of AML, BSA, and OFAC. Okay. First, you have to keep in mind we don't want to do business with bad people. That's how it boils down at the end of the day. You cannot do business with bad people. But in order to not do business with bad people, you have to know who the bad people are. So that means you have to know who your customer is. So the AML, BSA laws and regulations and rules put out the major components of an AML, BSA program. And they say, hey, anyone to whom these laws are applicable, you have to know who you're dealing with. You have to verify their identity. And there's lots of third-party resources out there that can help you with that. But the rules define certain information that you have to gather from all of your customers to make sure that those people can be properly vetted or sufficiently vetted to meet the requirements under the regulation. Things like, of course, their name, their EIN, or if they're a sole prop, their social security number, their formation documents to make sure that they are, that the entity has been born and it's a legitimate going concern. It's not just some kind of shell company. This information can be loaded onto third-party resources like LexisNexis, for example. I know Wolters Kluwer also has these kinds of resources, and there's lots of different ones. I'm not endorsing anyone in particular, but a lot of resources exist to where you can upload this data to have it screened against all the applicable and available databases. And one of those includes the OFAC lists. And the OFAC list, if you take our basic definition, if you can't do business with bad people, and OFAC basically says you cannot move blocked property for blocked persons. And what that is OFAC goes through and they've identified certain foreign actors to say these people, right now at least, at the present moment, are blocked persons, which means you cannot help them move money or property on their behalf. You just can't do it, and if they catch you doing it, I don't know, I think they lock you under the jail or something. You just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And it's easy to avoid if you're collecting the proper information and screening your customers. For those of us who the BSA laws are applicable, we have to have a BSA compliance officer to oversee our program. We have to have a written BSA policy that talks about all of these things. I tell people, remember, it's not a one and done thing. Especially if you're processing payroll. I took your information when you first came on board as a client, but if I process your payroll every week or two, every time I process your payroll, I'm basically telling the government, hey, I'm not doing business with bad people. The people are still good people, or they're not on the naughty list. So it's an ongoing commitment. It's an ongoing screening. one of the things that your auditor is going to look for, it's actually called independent review in BSA, is they're going to be looking for your customer due diligence program and your transaction monitoring program. Are you on an ongoing basis making sure that you're still not doing business with bad people? And I mentioned the independent review. That's another requirement of the BSA regulations, that it's not defined, the time period's not defined in the regulation, but in the exam manuals, you'll see that every 12 to 18 months is expected behavior. So, people to whom BSA is applicable, you need to do an annual risk assessment that is defined, and then you need to have an independent review every 12 to 18 months so that you can show that you're following the BSA laws. Now,
Chris, just thinking about this historically, so I think the AML, the anti-money laundering stuff, goes back into the 70s, right? Because you can imagine the U.S. government doesn't want to make it easy for crime syndicates to launder their money from this bad operation to that bad operation. Hey, I just set up a shell company, and the money comes in there, and it comes out in the form of good W-2 payroll to a bunch more bad people. The money is now laundered, right? Enter 9/11, and all of a sudden it's not just crime syndicates for money laundering, it's terrorist organizations. How do we make sure money is clean? Fair to say that maybe those are the big initial drivers, but the acceleration of compliance requirements has a lot more to do with just the ever-changing banking infrastructure and how fast and easy it is to move money, that you have to real-time monitor. It's not just enough to say, okay, you are a real entity when you set up, because the criminals know that. They set up a legitimate laundromat and then later start funneling the money through the laundromat, right? That you have to have the ongoing...
more than bed sheets.
That's right. So what are the challenges that, say a smaller payroll company, or probably my bigger concern for is the thousands of accounting firms providing payroll services for their clients? How do they continually monitor this and stay compliant? So
I mentioned the third-party resources that are out there, that the firms that have tools that specialize in this. That's the only way. If you're doing anything at scale, you can't do this with human beings. I mean, you have to. You might have a human being that uploads it into a database or things like that, but you need some sort of automation. That's going to continually work with the third party to screen all the customers at the right cadence as defined in your AML BSA policy. But I'm mentioning third-party resources. I'm mentioning automation. I know all about these things, Mike. You're one of my go-to resources on AI and automation. But and I know these are expensive words.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, to have the technical development people to build, the AI and the bots and all the processes that will integrate with your third-party resources, and the third-party resources have annual fees, and if you're, they may charge you differently depending on how many screenings that you're doing under a certain period of time. So these are all questions that you're going to want to ask if you're employing a third-party vendor to help you with your AML BSA screening. What lists come with my membership? How many people can I screen? One of the small questions that people wouldn't think about. If I have a false positive come up, is there a way to clear that person, at least for a certain period of time, so that every week or every month where I screen this person, it's not coming up with another false positive that I didn't have to have a human being go in and clear? Because that takes a lot of time, and time is money.
Yeah.
The other small thing, or at least you think it's a small thing, so the AML BSA OFAC, they actually do have federal regulators that will come in and
exactly
help
where I was
enforce
going to
those
go.
things.
Yeah. Yeah. So what does teeth look like and feel like this unlike NACHA?
So, if you're not a bank, but you're a money service business, right? That's if you're a money transmitter, then let's see, it's the FFIEC that you have to register with as a money service business. It's a group of federal regulators that you have to file an online form to register with FinCEN, which is is a federal financial regulator. As a money transmitter, I believe the federal regulator would be the IRS. And I don't think I have to define that acronym for anybody on this call. So, to add, I know we started this conversation on some of the regulatory uncertainty. I have a lot of friends at FinCEN, and we've talked about this conversation about this question of, is a payroll service company a money transmitter? And the answer is, we don't know. I've not seen a written opinion from FinCEN that clarifies that particular question. So a lot of people are going to see that and go, oh, well, I can tune out then. If it's uncertain if it applies, I'm willing to roll the dice and wait. Don't do that. Here's the reason why. There are many states, and increasingly with the MTMA adoption, even if you're not required to register as an MSB, money services business, because you're a money transmitter, that was typically where the Bank Secrecy Act compliance came in. If you're a federal MSB, you have to follow the federal BSA, right? Very simple logic. The states came in and said, their laws used to say, follow the BSA if applicable. And then the states changed and said, no, follow the BSA. We don't care if you're required to follow it at the federal level.
Oh.
So a lot of states have said, follow the BSA as if it applies to you, because now it does. We're telling you it does.
Interesting.
And if you don't follow it, and you get a state exam in one of these states that require it, you've been dinged on an exam. So I want to make sure that people on the call hear
IRS. So enforcement from federal levels, the IRS.
Yes.
Enforcement at the state level, should you be audited, would be their either Secretary of State or a Treasury Department or...
No, it's going to be the bank regulator. It's going to be whoever regulates you as a money transmitter. So in Texas, that would be the Department of Banking. In Alabama, that would be the Securities Commission.
Got it. That makes sense.
So just like a bank has both a federal regulator and a state regulator, right? A money transmitter, Asure, for example, is registered with FinCEN under our operating company, Asure Operations, which is our operating company that holds all of our money transmission licenses. We're registered with FinCEN because we did it out of an abundance of caution. Talking directly with people at FinCEN, the answer was, I don't know, but our banking partners expected to see it. Our state regulators they expected to see it, but at the end of the day, they didn't really care. Of course, we're already doing all of the compliance things necessary to have, a stellar BSA program. So in our analysis, it didn't hurt to go ahead and get registered. And it removed all doubt and all risk from our portfolio. So that's why we made the decision to go ahead and do it. But to your point, as we get examined by our state regulators, they look at our BSA program and our BSA independent reviews and risk assessments to make sure that we're complying with the BSA, which they've incorporated now into their state laws.
Got it.